Hi Team C, this is Mrs. Butch. I'm going to walk you through today's assignment. You should be working on this assignment only if you've already finished the March on Washington article that Mrs. Messner did with you guys. This article will come after you watch the introduction video about Malcolm X, because you definitely need some background about him before you start reading this or listening to this, or this will not make any sense. Malcolm X is an amazing figure, historical figure, but you must know some background about him before you start this assignment. So only start this assignment right now if you have already watched the introduction video. If you have not watched the introduction video, you need to stop this video right now and go back and follow the directions on Mrs. Messner's website. So today, right now, you're just going to listen to me read the article to you. I'll give you have a copy of this in your kit that we made in English class, but I will also show you the article as we read it. This article is very interesting. It's actually an excerpt. I should stop calling it an article because it's actually an excerpt. So an excerpt is a small part of something larger. This is an excerpt of Malcolm X's autobiography. The biography, he actually had help writing it, so it's a biography. But he wrote this just before he was assassinated, and he actually never got to experience how successful his biography and his autobiography actually were, because he was murdered before it was published. So these were his thoughts about the March on Washington. As you know, the March on Washington was largely considered a huge success. It was considered a success by the participants, by the organizers, and everyone just thought it was amazing and great. Nobody had anything bad to say about it, except Malcolm X. So these are his thoughts about the March on Washington. And as you listen to this read aloud to you, I would just like you to start thinking about your opinion. You're allowed to have your own opinion. You don't have to agree that the march was successful. You don't have to agree that the march was unsuccessful. You get to decide how you feel about it. I am wondering, though, how many, or if any of you, will come into this article thinking one way and change by the end of listening to this article. So it's just something interesting to consider. So make sure that you are keeping that in mind while we listen. I would encourage you to take out this paper from your at-home kit and you can follow along, but I will also make sure that I show you everything that we're reading. Please make sure that you understand how this paper is set up before we even begin. On the left side, you have the actual excerpt. So everything on the left, on the front and back of the paper, is the actual excerpt. The right side are some guiding questions that we're going to work on in another video. So you don't even really need to pay any attention to the right column right now. But there are some very important things that I want to show you. Because Malcolm X was such an intelligent man, he uses very difficult vocabulary. I think that you will find this excerpt very difficult. I actually, just something else I can tell you guys is I tried to read Malcolm X's autobiography. It's very long and it is very well written. It was so hard to read that I actually stopped, and I think I'm going to come back to it later because it was just so much. There's so much difficult vocabulary because he was so intelligent that I found myself having to look up words all the time that I didn't know. And it just kind of, honestly, it just kind of got exhausting. His biography is fascinating and I really enjoyed it, but it was really difficult to read. So I think that you will find that this is a difficult article, but we'll break it down and we'll talk about it. So what I want to bring your attention to is when I found a difficult word that I thought you might not know, I actually gave you this right here. This tiny little number right here is called a superscript. So that means it's up high, not down low like a footnote. And then those numbers match up. I also gave you the definition, and I've tried to put it as closely to the word as possible. So as you can see, the first word that I thought you might not be familiar with is farce. And we can notice that I have the definition right below it. A farce is a joke or a comedy. Later on in the excerpt, I wasn't sure if you would notice the word lulling. I wasn't sure if you would know that word. So I double underlined it. When things are double underlined in this excerpt, that means that they are vocabulary that you might not know. And then if you follow the superscript number, you can see that you can find the definition for the word lulling over on the right side of this paper in the right column. So lulling means calm or calming. The next word that I thought you might have trouble with is the word diluting. So as you can see, it's double underlined and it has a number. We can go over to the right column and see that diluting means deceiving. If I scroll through the rest of this page, I'm just looking for things that are double underlined over here in this left column. So let's just take a look. Is there anything else that's double underlined? Nope, just skimming through, I don't see anything else that's double underlined. Let's flip to the back. On the back side straight away, I see a word that I thought you might not know, subsequent. So this is number 9. I can go over to the right column and see that subsequent means later or following. It means after. It's like a time order word. It means after or later. The next word that I thought you might not know is also in this box. It's the word psyche. And if we go over to number 10 in the right column, psyche means mind. Skimming through, it looks like there are 2 more words that you might not know. We have lull, number 14. So this was actually the same as on the front. In this case, we can go over to number 14. Again, it means to calm. And then this is the last word that I thought you might have some trouble with, inevitably. So inevitably, if something is inevitable, it's unavoidable. So unavoidably. All right, so before you start listening, I just thought it was important for you to understand how this document is set up, because there are things that are underlined, there are things that are double underlined, there are numbers everywhere, and even on the back, you've even got some boxes. So it's very important that you understand how this is set up before we even start listening to the excerpt. All right, before we start, I also want to bring your attention to like the double underlining and the boxes. The single underlining. So we already talked about double underlining. That's for like vocabulary words or things that you might not know. Then make sure that you're just paying attention. Whenever I've got something underlined, it does have a number. So you can see that this is number 4. And it just means that you should always go over and check on the right side and see, do I have a question? Do I have a statement? Do I have something that you have to do over here? We're going to do all of this together, so don't think that it's something that you have to do on your own. I just want to bring your attention to it. So if something is underlined, it probably means that there's a question attached to it, and you will need to go look in the right-hand column to figure out what you're supposed to do. On the back, you have things in boxes. You have 2 boxes on the back. I can show you that, for example, we've got number 11 right here, and number 11 doesn't have anything underlined for it, but it does, that 11 does indicate that you should go over and look in the right-hand column. So number 11 doesn't have anything underlined, it's in a box. Number 11 says to summarize the author's point of view in this section. So that would mean that we are counting this whole box as its own section. If I scroll down to the box on the bottom, I can see that number 16 right here ends, and it asks you to go over to the right-hand column, and it tells you to do something, but you're going to do it for that section. Okay, long enough. That is long enough to kind of explain how this document is set up. The first thing I'm going to do is ask that you flip it back over to the front, and I am going to just read the excerpt to you. There's nothing that you need to stop and do. You just need to pay attention, follow along, and listen while I read Malcolm X's words to you. Start with the title. Malcolm X on the Farce on Washington. Not long ago, the black man in America was fed a dose of another form of the weakening, lulling, and deluding effects of so-called integration. It was that farce on Washington, I call it. The morning of the march, any rickety carloads of angry, dusty, sweating small-town Negroes would have gotten lost among the chartered jet planes, railroad cars, and air-conditioned buses. What originally was planned to be an angry riptide, one English newspaper aptly described now as the gentle flood. Talk about integrated, it was like salt and pepper, and by now there wasn't a single logistical aspect uncontrolled. The marchers had been instructed to bring no signs. Signs were provided. They have been told to sing one song, "We Shall Overcome." They have been told how to arrive, when, where to arrive, where to assemble, when to start marching, the route to march. First aid stations were strategically located, even where to faint. Yes, I was there. I observed that circus. Who ever heard of angry revolutionists all harmonizing, "We shall overcome someday," while tripping and swaying along, arm in arm, with the very people they were supposed to be angrily revolting against? Who ever heard of angry revolutionists swinging their bare feet together with their oppressor in the lily pad park pools with gospels and guitars and "I have a dream" speeches? Hollywood couldn't have topped it. In a subsequent press pool, not one congressman or senator with a previous record of opposition to civil rights said he had changed his views. What did anyone expect? How was a one-day integrated picnic going to counter-influence the representatives of prejudice rooted deep in the psyche of the American white man for 400 years? The very fact that millions, black and white, believed in this monumental farce is another example of how much this country goes in for the surface glossing over, the escape ruse, surfaces, instead of truly dealing with its deep-rooted problems. What that March on Washington did do was lull Negroes for a while, but inevitably, the black masses started realizing that they had been smoothly hoaxed again by the white man, and, inevitably, the black man's anger rekindled deeper than ever, and there began bursting out in different cities the long hot summer of 1964, unprecedented racial crisis. And as you can see, the source is Malcolm X, and he wrote this with Alex Haley, that's another author, and this was the autobiography of Malcolm X published in 1965. Now that you have listened to this article read aloud to you and you understand how the paper is set up, you can go on to the next video that's listed, because what you'll do in the next video is you will start working on all of the things on the right side in order to help you actually understand this article. Maybe some of you have an idea right now, and that is awesome. I would encourage you, if there were more words that you did not understand in this article, I would encourage you to go back and look some of those up. For example, what does it mean to be hoaxed? What does it mean? What does monumental mean? Some of these things I didn't include as vocabulary words, but that doesn't mean that you have to understand all the words. So if you want, it would deepen your understanding to go back and pay attention and even look up some of these words. All right, so now this video is over. You can go on to, you can take a break, or you can go on to the next video right away where you will start digging into the questions and things that it asks you to do on the right side, because we don't want you doing this on your own. If we were in class, we'd be doing it together. All right, I'll talk to you guys later in the next video.